Dear students, this e-content describes complete analysis of the poem Ode to Solitude written by Alexander Pope. Author's note: Early life and isolation. Alexander Pope was born in the year of 1688. Pope was often isolated due to his Catholic faith, which restricted his education and movement, leading to his early focus on nature and solitude. Early career: despite his earlier ode, he became a leading poet of 18th century known for witty satires, though his childhood poems like one of his relieve profound early insights. Later life: he lived much of his adult life in Twickenham, creating a beautiful garden, but his early ideal of solitude in this poem didn't fully mirror his famous public career. Ode to Solitude by Alexander Pope describes the ideal happy life of one contented solitude on his one's own land. Free from stress of the outside world, the poem outlines the life where a man is self-sufficient, living in harmony with nature and his own peace of mind, and concludes his poet's wish to live in a similarly unnoticed life until death. Read a poem, Ode to Solitude by Alexander Pope. Stanza 1: Happy the man whose wish and care a few parental acres bound, content to breathe his native air in his own ground. Stanza 2: Whose herds with milk, whose fields with bread, whose flocks supply him with the attire, whose trees his summer yield in his shade, in the winter fire. Stanza 3: Blessed who can unconcernedly find hours, days, years slide soft away. In the health of the body, peace of mind quit by day. Stanza 4: Sound sleep by night, study and ease, together mixed, sweet recreation and innocence, which most does please with meditation. Stanza 5: Thus let me live unseen, unknown, thus unlimited let me die. Steal from the world, not a stone, tell where I lie. Let us see a little gist about the poem. Alexander Pope's Ode to Solitude, written around in 1700, where he was just 12, idealized a simple and self-sufficient life in nature, finding contentment in nature farm, far from societal pursuit, a theme stemming partly from his own isolated upbringing as a Catholic in 18th century England. Though ironically, he later became a major literary figure, not a recluse. Pope's early work contrasts sharply with his later satire, offering earnest praise from quiet, humble living, study, peace over fame, and wealth, a vision of happy solitude. About the poem, the theme: it celebrates a simple, content life close to nature, free from worldly ambitions. Content describes a man's happy with his own small estate, finding everything he needs: food, warmth, peace from the land, and enjoys quiet activities like reading and meditations. Core ideas: the true happiness lies in the being unseen, unknown, unlimited, stealing away from the world. Let us see the structure and form of the poem. The poem is an ode, lyrical poem expressing admiration. In this case, for example, solitary life. Stanzas: the poem has 5 stanzas, as also called as quatrains. Each stanza contains 4 lines, so the poem has 20 lines total. Rhyming scheme: each stanza follows AB rhyming scheme. Example: stanza 1: Care, first line it ends with a sound with the rhyming A, and the second line ends with the sound in the word bound, so it is the rhyming is B. Then the third line ends with that is air, rhyming scheme is A. Then fourth line ends with the sound, ground, so the first line a sound and the third line a sound rhyme together A. and the second line d sound, and fourth line d sound, d, so it rhymes as b b. So the rhyming scheme is a b a b. This pattern consists in all the stanzas. The next is meter of the poem. The poem is written in iambic tetrameter. Each line has four iambics as unstressed syllable followed by stressed one. So each line totally eight syllables. For example, happy the man whose wish and care. We can see da dum da dum da dum da dum rhyming. Such an eight syllable, and the tone is very calm, reflective, and peaceful, and celebrates rural simplicity and solitude. The style is very simple and classical diction, balanced, clear, harmonious phrasing, typical and of Pope's early poetry. Uses cataloging, listing sources of contentment, personification, imagery, rural and pastoral, and contrast, quiet life, averse fame. Let us see the political and social background of the poem. The early 18th century England of the Augustan age. The poem was written during early 17th century, a period known as an Augustan age, a time often associated with the poem stability under the Queen reign of 1702 to 1714, and the rise of political parties, Whigs and Tories, is it's quite common in this era. The growth of cities, commerce, and newspapers prevailed in this century. The strong interest of classical ideas such as orders, harmony, and reason, it plays a vital role in this period. So this period is varied moderation, simplicity, self-control, ideas of strongly shaped Alexander Pope's celebration of calm and rural life. The next social background, we can see the vital aspects is increasing social changes and urbanization. So England faced during Pope's time was becoming more urban and commercial and materialistic. London was expanded rapidly and the people were chasing wealth, fame, and social status. In contrast, the Pope's poem phrases the opposite, a quiet, rural, self sufficient life away from crowd and ambition. Then, this contrast reflects a growing anxiety about modern society. Then, third one, we can see the class and land ownership plays a major role during this era. That society was still dominated by landed gentry landowners, the aristocracy and the church, rural farmers and peasants. The poem idolizes the self-sustaining rural ownership with a few parental acres, suggesting a modest inheritance rather than huge wealth. This reflects a nostalgic admiration of traditional agriculture life by the poet, and we can see the purer and more stable than urban commerce in this poem. And the next is Pope's personal context. And Alexander Pope came from that of Catholic family, a group that was legally restricted, excluded from universities, government office, and public power, often persecuted socially. Because of these restrictions, Pope lived a quite private life away from political and public affair. His longing for the privacy and peace is reflected in this poem, Ode to Solitude. And we can see his own exclusions, his desire for independence, his withdrawal from public life. Everything, it is an autobiographical note, reflects in this poem. So next is reaction against political corruption. Early 18th century politicals were full of court intrigues, growing corruption, and we can see intense party conflicts, Whigs and Tories. Many writers reacted by phrasing nature's simplicity and rural innocence. The poem Idle of Living, Unseen, Unknown reflects disappointment with public life and political ambition. Pope suggests that the true happiness comes from escaping the competitive and corrupt world. Next is classical influence. The poem also reflects the political and social philosophy of Horace Virgil and other classical poets. These poets phrase the golden mean, that the balanced life between luxury and poverty, an idea very influential during the Augustan age. Pope adopts this classical model to critique modern restlessness. Let us see the literary device found in this poem. The first is imagery. Alexander Pope uses vivid picture appealing to the senses. For example, whose hurts with milk? In this phrase, we can see the author make use of visual taste imagery. The next phrase, whose trees in the summer yields him shade? In this phrase, we can see, the visual and tactile imageries is being used by the author. And the next phrase, the sound sleeps by night, we can see the sensory images. So author make use of visual taste imagery and visual and tactile and sensory imagery and all these phrases, and these images creates a peaceful and rural atmosphere that reflects it in this poem. The next is alliterations. Repetition of constant sound for melody is alliterations. For example, look at the phrase sound sleeps. The sound s is repeated in both words, so we can find the alliteration in this phrases. The next is hours, days, years, slide, soft, away. So look at the word slide and soft. Again, s sound is repeated in this both words. We can find alliteration in this phrases. Next is study and ease. So these makes the poems smooth and musical. Next, literary devices personification. The time is given a human quality is called as an personification. For example, hours, days, and years slide soft away. So this makes feels like gentle and peaceful. We can see all these phrases are being personified. The next device is metaphor, the direct comparison without like or as. The entire poem metaphor for an ideal and balanced life. For example, look at the phrase steal from the world, living life quietly in comparatively to quite slipping away. The next is the contrast is, the author make use of contrast devices such as rural peace versus urban ambition, and it is a both contrast aspects of rural life and urban life and their ambition. Then next is we can see the two contrasts of quiet life and fame life. The quiet life represents the country life, and whereas the fame life it represents the city life. Then we can see the two other contrasts of simplicity and materialism. Simplicity we can see in the country life, whereas materialism we can find in the city life. So this strengthens the poem's theme of evaluating solitude. Next device is hyperbole, which is an inversion. The classical poet word order is used for rhythm. Happy the man instead, the man is happy. This gives the poem a classical tone. The next device is parallelism. Similar grammatical structures create rhythm. On these lines, we can see hours, days, and years. The studies and ease and together mix it. The parallelism makes the poem balanced and harmonious. Next is enjambment. The sentence continues to the next line without stop. Hours, days, years, slides soft away. In the health of the body, peace of mind, this gives a poem a flowing and effortless rhythm. Next is epigrammatic style. Short and polished wise statement typical to the author. And find out this line such as happy the man whose vision, care, and few parental acres bound. So these lines expresses deep idea of simple life and memorable phrasing that echoes the autobiographical life of the poet who spent his life in his native place in a very calm, in a peaceful manner. The next device is classical allusion. The poem reflects the philosophy of Horace, a classical poet who phrases simplicity, self-sufficiency, the golden mean. The Pope imitates their structure and ideas. Next is rhyming scheme. That A B is every stanza. The consistent rhyming adds harmony and balance throughout the poem. The next is device is iambic tetrameter. And each line has four iambic such as star-dum patterns. It continues in all the verses of this poem. This meter creates a calm, steady rhythm matching to the poem theme. Next, we can see the theme of the poem. The first theme is joy of simple living. The central theme of the true happiness comes from simple and rural life, not with the wealth or the fame. And hence, the poet traces the man who's satisfied with a few parental acres, content to his natural surrounding, free from complicated desires. The second theme we can see self-sufficiency. The poem highlights interdependence and self-reliance. The idle person has milk from his herds, bread from his fields, clothes from his flocks, and shade and firewood from his tree. Everything he needs comes from his own land. This shows a beauty of life not dependent on others. Next theme we can see that's peace and contentment. The poem presents a life is filled with health, peace of mind, quiet days, and sound sleep. And we can see this simple life, peace, and pleasure are valued more than ambitious achievement. Contentment is portrayed as a form of true wealth. Next theme is solitude as a blessing. Rather than seeing solitude as loneliness, Pope presents restful, healing, and liberating of a human life, and solitude always allows times for study, recreation, innocence, and meditation, and it also becomes a positive, enriching state of being. The next theme is rejection of fame and ambition. The poet criticizes the worldly ambition, public recognition, and pursuit of fame, noisy and busy social life, and ahead the author speaks wishes to live unseen, unknown, showing the theme of escape from society of modern city life. The next theme is harmony with nature. The nature is shown as an perfect provider of food, shelter, warmth, and clothing, the shade of summer and fire in winter. So the poet highlights living closely with nature brings balances and satisfaction, emphasize a pastoral ideal life. Next theme is value of quiet and private life, whereas the poet contrasts quiet life within a chaotic world of city life. He wishes to live without attracting attention. He wished to die unlamented and he want to leave an mournful behind. This expresses a theme of beauty of privacy, a life without public pressure that is more common in city life. Next theme is passage of time. The poem treats the passing of time as gentle, not frightened. In this phrase, we can see hours, days, and years slide soft away. So this line shows life lived without stress and where the time flows naturally.